In this After Effects video, we're going to look at the effect of cloning. It's actually quite easy to do, and it'll look something like this. So you'll see we have the same person on the screen in what looks to be the same area 3 times. With cloning, the actual process in After Effects is quite simple, and I'll show you that in a moment. But one of the big things to think about is actually the filming beforehand. It's very important that you worry about your lighting, positioning of characters. You want no overlap between the things that you're trying to clone, and even things like shadows. The one thing you'll notice in this that doesn't quite work is the shadowing. For instance, you can see this shadow kind of cuts out, this shadow kind of cuts out, etc. And I'll show you why that happens when we actually go to do it in After Effects. So with your cloning, think about the way you're going to stage your scene before you actually film it. It's very important. Okay, so inside After Effects, I've just dragged in my 3 video files, and you'll notice that the 3 video files are quite simply just the person standing on a different area of this section of the school and looking around at each other and so on. So to get going, I'm going to grab all 3 files and I'm just going to drag them down to my timeline, and I'm just going to click OK on the composition settings because I don't need to change any of those. I'll notice that it's dragged in all 3 videos, and the first thing I'm going to have to do is worry about the timing. So I'm not going to play around too much with making this perfect in terms of interactions with one another. I'm just going to quickly cut these clips to the same size. Okay, once my 3 clips pretty much run at the same length, I'm going to have a look at my timeline here. Now, my bottom layered video, I'm not going to mask. I'm going to use masking on the top 2 layers to allow this cloning effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my bottom layer invisible, and I'm going to make my middle layer invisible. And I'm going to click on my first movie clip there. At the top, I'm going to grab my pen tool, and I'm going to set up a mask. I'm going to do that by simply clicking around a section of the character that I want to almost cut out. So I've finished that path, and I've got a mask there. If I go back down to select my selection tool and go back down to my timeline down the bottom here, I'm just going to click hide on that first layer, select my second layer, and make it visible. Now, if these characters were closer and I was worried about my 2 masks touching each other, I could simply click on the first layer again and see where that mask is, so I know exactly how far across I can go on my second one. I'm going to go back to my second layer, grab the pen tool again, and I'm going to set up my second mask. Once again, selection tool, I'm going to make visible all 3 layers, and you can see already that my mask on my second layer is probably a little bit too close to my last layered character. So I'm just going to click on the edges here and drag those in a bit. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with what we call the feathering. Now, the background is all from this last video. So this last video is providing the entire background. Second layer and third layer are just providing those 2 areas that I've cut out. Now, to make it look a little bit more realistic, we use what we call feathering. So if I zoom in, you'll notice how there's almost like a cut there where the mask is. So I want to feather this to make it look a little bit more realistic. To do that, I'm going to click on the drop down arrow, once again on masks, one more time, and I'm going to go to mask feather. Make sure I'm at the beginning of my clip. I'm going to tick the little stopwatch there, and I'm going to increase the feathering. And what that's going to do is it's going to soften my edges around the mask. So it's going to make it look like it blends in a little bit better with the actual background layer. So I'm going to make that around about 70. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for the second layer. Mask feather, and I'm just going to type in 70. And drop that back down to 50%. And when I preview that, close these off, I have my cloned effect. Three people, the exact same person, looking around at each other on the same area, and it's a great little effect you can use for a number of different purposes.